ladies and gentlemen, this is Watson Michael from Ceylon Institute of English and Leadership. And today, we have a great leader with us, Mr. Sean Kidney, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Climate Bonds Initiative, Professor in Practice at SOAS University London, and is a member of the European Union Platform on Sustainable Finance. So Sean, welcome, and how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Michael, and thanks for having me on.
Such an honor to have you, Sean. So these days, like we see many things going on, right? So what are your views on the current climate crisis?
Well, it's not exactly just current, it's ongoing, it's been going on for a long time, and it's about to get more severe, much more severe. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of ways of answering that question, Michael.
Yeah.
The first question is that as humans, we've developed some extraordinary capabilities. Capabilities. I mean, one capability is to do what our ancients dreamed of, which is to have a direct impact on climate. In fact, we've been having an impact on the climate, on the weather, on the world, on nature for thousands of years, but it's certainly become a lot more exaggerated recently. And we're in the middle of grappling with that, understanding cause and effect. Most people don't realize it yet, but in fact, we're having an extraordinary impact on our incredibly fragile ecosystem. Doesn't mean to say we're in control. I mean, at any one time, we could get a series of volcanic activities, and that would wipe out life on the planet if it was really severe. So it's not true that we're putting control, but we're certainly having a major impact. That's one. Two is, in terms of the specifics of the impact that's going on at the moment, all the science is pretty ugly. I mean, the one that worries me most is the great biodiversity extinction. We're in the middle of the sixth greatest extinction event on the planet. This time it's different because we've initiated it. The past time it's because of meteors or volcanic activity or other such activities. This time it's a humans created one. We are losing species at an extraordinary rate every day, and we're losing them so quickly we haven't got time to replace them with new mutations. So we're sort of emptying out the locker of biodiversity, if you like. Currently, a third of all the tree species on the planet are under threat of extinction. A third. What the hell? Exactly. And so on and so on. So that's a pretty severe thing. But fundamentally on climate change, we have in the last 150 years had a pretty drastic impact on emissions levels. We now know, the science is telling us. A more significant impact that we've seen in volcanic eruptions, actually, which take longer over multiple eruptions in pre-human history, this is. The World Meteorological Organization says we'll now see 1.5 degrees Celsius warming by 2027. That is very, very fast. Our target is that we don't get more than 1.5 by 2050. Goodbye to that. We're on a race now to ensure that we don't see catastrophic changes. And catastrophic changes are where we abandon about a third of the world's territory that we currently inhabit. And that probably means the whole of Sri Lanka, for example. This is the kind of severity of what the world would look like under 8 degrees warming. Really, this is dramatic. This is something that we have not experienced as humans on this planet. Just the beginning of human history. Dinosaurs experienced it. That's when Antarctica was rainforest, for example. So, it's possible that life will adapt, although the speed of change is very worrying because we don't know how well life can adapt. But one thing's for sure, if we were to get there, and this is what the current trajectory is, by the way, I'm not talking about a chance, I'm talking about this is where we're going. You're driving on the road, this is currently what we're aiming at. I'm not sure humans can exist. I think we're looking at an extinction event for humans added to the sixth great extinction. So that's not good news, I'm afraid. And also just 1.5 degrees. And of course, we're in a fight now to stop warming getting beyond 2 and bring it down to 1.5. That's the official global target now.
Yeah.
That already will see a world of drastically changed ecosystems, of drastically changed biodiversity, and of drastically changed human habitation areas. There will be chunks of India that we will have to abandon.
My goodness.
And I think that's given now. I don't think we can avoid that. I think it's just a bit uncertain as to where it's going to fall and so on. You know, it will mean changes to the monsoon in South Asia. We expect it to have no monsoon 1 year in 5 now.
Yeah.
Now, we can survive that if we start building water storage fast, which we don't have enough of, right? So we're going to prepare. So resilience in the context of these changes now becomes a really dominant agenda while we continue to get emissions down. So I'm going to say it's pretty tough. The climate scientists I speak to say we still have a chance to avoid the worst.
Definitely.
But that window is very, very short. We might have 2050 targets, but actually what counts is 2030. 2030 is the target that counts. So there we go.
Absolutely. Yeah. So based on this, what is meant by green finance? And could you share some examples?
So there are green shoots in the world, let's just say that. The things that are beginning to change.
Yeah.
Which gives us some hope. You know, the discussion we're seeing in Asia about the need for transition is heartening. It's still weak in terms of its understanding of the necessary ambition, but the discussion, the right discussion. So we're moving forward on that. The growth of green finance, which is very simple. It's finance towards solutions for climate change. That's all. Very simple idea. Has been stratospheric. You know, in the green bond space, the area we work in, we've grown from $2 billion of these things when we started about 13 years ago to now $3 trillion US.
Wow.
That's pretty big. That's a lot bigger than the Sri Lankan economy, GDP.
Yeah, way high.
So we're moving quite fast. The challenge is it fast enough? And the answer is no. We need to be seeing about $9 trillion a year of investment in climate solutions, in mitigation. And we're probably doing no better than about $1.5 trillion now. Yeah. So we've got a long way to go yet. But, you know, full credit, we are shifting in the right direction. Often because of decisions that were made in 2001, when the German Greens came into power in Germany. They pushed the feed-in tariff. The Labour government that was the leadership in the coalition didn't really understand it. It turned out to be revolutionary. And it led to large-scale procurement of renewables, which drove down the price. And now that got picked up by China in 2006, and they've been the largest investor in renewables every single year ever since. And that's driven large-scale production in China, which has driven down the cost of solar and also wind around the world. So in Sri Lanka, we now pay very low cost for solar cells purely because of the action of the German government and then the Chinese government. Strong state action. And everyone else gets the dividend. And that's beginning. That's happening in electric vehicles too. In 2030, I don't expect us to see petrol vehicles being sold because electric vehicles are going to be cheaper and the range, well, it's especially perfect for Sri Lanka. The whole fleet could change over electric quite quickly, subject to secure energy, which is the other thing. You know, cheap renewables is improving the energy. Electric vehicles will change. I mean, we need more railways and buses. Don't get me wrong, but at least the vehicle park will change. So we're making progress in those areas, but we've got a lot of more areas we've got to make progress. A lot more. That's just this tiny part of the solution. Industrial changes, which is a massive contributor to emissions, transport of all sorts, especially shipping and aviation, land use changes. The biggest source of emissions is land use, and the biggest opportunity to sequester is land use. So what does that look like going forward? That's going to change. It's going to have to change anyway because climate is changing. Let's make sure it changes in the right direction. Water management, which, by the way, uses a lot of energy. In California, 15% of all the electricity generated in California goes to pumping water around. 15%. Wow. And in a lot of places, it's like that. Globally, the average is 7%. That's a lot of electricity. If we can make sure that that is low, very energy efficient, low energy use, we contribute a lot to mitigation. And we also address resilience, because the other thing we have to do with water is to ensure that we manage it properly, don't waste it. Large reservoirs that let it evaporate in the heat are not very good in places like Pakistan. We have to change those things. And we need to make sure that we're using it much more efficiently on land. We need drip feed agriculture to become the norm, irrigation to become the norm, not open channel. Hey, there's a lot to be done, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. So what does exactly Climate Bonds do, your company?
So we work to encourage investment in solutions, capital, and we've had some success. The main...
Sean, mute. Yeah. Yeah.
Apologies, Michael.
No
Something happened. We work to encourage investment in climate solutions. So I've got to talk about a bit about what those climate solutions are, which is what we've been discussing, and then I've got to talk about how we achieve a change. But what I can tell you is, by managing to create a very large, liquid and successful market, $3 trillion of green, another trillion of social and sustainable and related bonds, we've proven that investors will invest if you give them solutions. They will invest in spades. The oversubscription rate for green bonds is much higher than ordinary bonds. You get slightly lower pricing. You get greater access to capital. In places like southern India, where getting access to capital is the problem. A green bond will get you access, but another bond won't. So these are the real benefits. And then on the back of that, we're now getting incentives. First, there's a whole lot of green bond guarantee schemes provided by development banks and others. So if you're a green bond issuer, you can get technical assistance funding. You might be able to get a guarantee for your bond. Cheaper capital, in other words, comes in many forms. So that's happening. We're now getting central banks and regulators around the world figuring out how to promote green bonds against what we call green. Of course, what we call green is important, right? Some things don't qualify. A new coal plant does not qualify. That it was tried by the coal industry at different times. A new gas plant doesn't qualify either. A biomethane or bioenergy plant will qualify. Now, in fact, one thing we've done in your area with the Central Bank of Sri Lanka is worked on a taxonomy of qualifying investment, which mirrors the European and the Chinese taxonomies that we've also been working on as guidance for the industry of what qualifies. We can now link that to preferences. So we can link that to preferential treatment by the central bank, or guarantee schemes that I gave you, or sometimes portfolios. So, for example, one large investor in the US is about to roll out a huge emerging markets resilience fund, specifically dedicated to investing in qualifying instruments judged by us under our taxonomy program in places like Sri Lanka. Those kinds of dedicated investment pools are growing because investors understand something pretty critical. You know, investors, institutional investors, that's the long-term investors, not the mum and pops who day trade. We're talking about people who are investing in your pension fund and my pension fund. They're worried about 20-year and 30-year horizons. They need to make sure they can pay your pension when you retire. Well, one thing that they know is they've got some real risk, and they're all full of actuaries who fully understand long-term risk. Climate change is the dominant long-term risk for all institutional investors. So if they can invest in things which mitigate that risk, they are very keen indeed. And they've still got to meet short-term requirements. So they can't have a big differential interest rate, but they are voting with their feet here. And that's why we've got more demand for green bonds than ordinary bonds, and green finance as well. And they're pushing governments to do more, give us more green things we can invest that will meet our risk yield requirements, because we're pension funds. We're not exactly a lunatic investor here. You've got to give something that's safe. But please, because we know we need it to reduce the risks of climate change going forward. That's the big change. Amongst global institutional investors now, thanks to various things like the Biden Climate Summit a few years ago, or the G20 statement last November about 1.5 degrees, I now have all investors saying the future has been decided. It will be green. That's certain. The only question is the speed of the transition and who's going to be a winner and who's going to be a loser. And that's hard to figure out, but at least I know where to look now.
Very true. And very insightful too, Sean. Yeah, very insightful. So another thing is, Sean, your company offers some trainings, right? And those are CPD accredited trainings. How will it help organizations and people?
Look, we do a range of things. One of the things we do is run a certification scheme for green debt and for company transition plans as well. If you want to get that recognized by global investors because we're a globally known brand name, that's linked to our green criteria, which is exemplified in the taxonomy work that we're doing around the world. It's also linked to policy instruments. And if you want to know about how all this works, you can do our training programs. So the training programs are usually undertaken by potential issuers, people from treasuries. Want to know. Sometimes from investors who are trying to understand how this works data related. Sometimes from government policy, Ministry of Finance people, and sometimes from central banks and regulators who are trying to understand how this green finance stuff works and how it could be useful to the things they're trying to do in their jobs. And we run them all around the world. We're running them there's a couple of weeks going on. Some are sponsored by people like UN Disaster Risk Relief or the Asian Development Bank. Others are hosted by banks in different places. People can also sign up because about 2/3 of these are online. People can also sign up individually to book a place if their institution can pay. If they work for a bank, then the bank will pay to do it. So there's lots of options available to us. But the training program keeps on going. It's a constant, and it's all about helping people figure out how to take advantage of this particular development in the world that's exemplified by green finance.
Very true. And it's a very insightful website. Okay, so much information is there. So a lot of things you can learn a lot.
I mean, I want to stress some of the other things we work on. We also work on policy advice for governments, especially ministries of finance. We've got a guide called 101 Ideas for Sustainable Finance Policy on our website at the moment, and that continues to be developed, and that's an ongoing project. And we do advisory work for governments. I'm an advisor to the Monetary Authority of Singapore, for example, to the European Commission, and to others around the world. We also work on promotional events, bringing investors and issuers together in places like London or Sao Paulo or Singapore. To try and around everything green, of course. We'll also work with investors to help them understand what's going on and how to use this market to reduce their risk. And we have investor councils and a big investor partnership program with most, I don't know if it's most, at least half the world's biggest investors: BlackRock, State Street, Fidelity, AXA, Allianz, people like that, as part of our partnership program. So there's a lot of things we do. And we also run conferences and educational events separate to the training around the world. Our next one, we did one in Hong Kong a few weeks ago. Our next one is in New York in September. Oh, no, the next one's in Bogota next week, actually, in Colombia for Latin America. So there's lots of things we do to try and really make sure capital flows towards climate solutions as fast as possible.
Very insightful, Sean. Right? Wow. So, Sean,
and also one other thing for your students that we're doing is we're working with the CFA Institute of India at the moment on a CFA Institute accredited training program. Which will be available remotely to people, because I'm conscious that we need the young people of today, and I'm treating anyone younger than me as young. Look at my grey hair. To help us change the planet, to help us address these risks going forward. And there's an opportunity here in sustainable finance to also get jobs while you're doing it, focusing on solutions that will make a difference and create returns for investors and insurance funds around the world. And that's the business. And sustainable finance business is booming globally. So the training part of it, the education part of it is really important, which is why, Michael, I'm so pleased to do this podcast.
Such an honor to have you, Sean. And Sean, any final message to all the listeners and viewers?
Look, there's a change coming. It's a bit like it's been getting hot and very stuffy, but there's a storm brewing. This storm
around the corner.
So this storm, well, there's going to be a lot of facets to it. There are some negative sides. There are some tough parts. That's the impact of climate change. That's going to be very difficult to negotiate, but if we prepare, fix our leaks now, for example, the roof won't leak, we will survive. But on the other side, there is a world revolution in how our economies are managed coming through the system.
Yeah.
Every country, every economy, every individual training in this area has got to understand that and figure out how to support it and take advantage of it. Yeah. It is a revolution. We are going to become green. It's a bit uncertain as to whether to do in time to stop the worst of climate change, which means there may be some very drastic impacts coming through. There may be. But whatever, we are going to clean energy. We are going to change land use. We are going to more sustainable cities. It's only a matter of how quickly we can get there and therefore how much we can avoid the difficult stuff. Everyone has a role. Everyone has an opportunity, and the opportunities are going to be immense. So join us, become part of this movement.
Absolutely. So Sean, thank you very much for taking time and doing this valuable podcast with us.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. And good luck to you and also to all your listeners in creating a world fit for our children.
Thank you very much.